Hi, everybody. Finn here, otherwise known as the Watcher. I've been doing some podcasts for those of you that know me with another guy, and they were cool, very cool. But that guy's busy, and he was doing it for free. And I decided that I'm going to move this to a video format. Well, A, because I'm not very good at sound editing, and B, because it's more personal. Really, realistically, it's more personal. So, without further ado, here is the first video episode of The Watcher. Um, just a little bit about me. I grew up in a fairly rural part of northern Illinois. Moved all around. I was in the Army. I'm a veteran. I've been around the world a few times and around America more than a few. Uh, I've been paying really, really heavy attention to American politics for a long time. And I'm an avid reader and tend to retain what I read. So for some reason, I end up saying things that come true generally more often than not. As a matter of fact, this last presidential election was the first presidential election I didn't predict correctly. And I'm still kind of, I've taken 4 years to figure out why. And I did, and I think I figured out why. But what I wanted to talk about today, because what we do here at The Watcher, if you've never seen it before, what we do here at The Watcher is we take modern events and bring a little historical context into it so that you can make a better decision your own on what you think might happen. And then if the worst happens, you're not quite so surprised. And if the best happens, then you knew it was coming and you feel a little good about yourself. And what I've been thinking about a lot lately coming into this 1 week, literally, we're 1 week from the Joe Biden, Donald J. Trump 2020 presidential election. And I'm pretty bullish on Biden's chances. There's no bones about it. Anyone that knows me knows I think so. So really what I've been thinking about more lately is what is the future of the Republican Party after this? Because we do have a two-party system, for better or for worse. Some of our early politicians consider them worse. Some of them consider them necessary. We don't have a parliamentary system, which I'm not overly familiar with, but I think that without a parliamentary system, it might be difficult to make a multi-party system work. The longest standing party in America right now is the Democratic Party, Democratic Republican Party at their inception. And then the other party, obviously, is the Republican Party, which was started by Abraham Lincoln. And we're not even going to get into the current status of that party as far as how Lincoln created that party. But what I do want to talk about is what's next for the Republicans, because it's clear they're going to lose, and they're going to lose big, and they believe it. And if you don't, then you're not like them, because they do believe they're going to lose, and they righteously should believe they're going to lose, because they've put themselves into a box where only the minority can support them. They took a long time gerrymandering themselves into what they thought might be a permanent majority, and it's turning out that it might have turned them into a permanent minority. Mostly because they took the veneer off and started saying all the quiet parts out loud that they weren't saying since Nixon. So where do we go from here? When they're done, when we beat them, when November 3rd is over and we start moving forward, where does the Republican Party go from here? They have a long history of, and not only not welcoming what are now minority populations, but soon to not be, they have actively angered them, I would say, on more than a few occasions. Even just yesterday, although I don't do a lot of current affairs, even just yesterday, Jared Kushner, the president's top advisor for his campaign and his governing, and all things really, I feel like he's pretty much outsourced the presidency to Jared. Just yesterday, he called black people lazy. They're saying the quiet parts out loud, and it's costing them. And they knew it was coming. They did a deep internal look after their 2012 loss from Mitt Romney losing to Barack Obama. And they looked internally to see what they could do. Only their only solution was to change their messaging and of their policies. Their policies have been unpopular across the board in poll after poll after poll for probably 20 plus years now. Most of their policies. Now it's almost all of their policies. I don't really have to get into the science denying and the race baiting, but they're out of step with the modern world, and that's costing them greatly. So there's questions. What can they do after this? What's possible? What's possible for the Republican Party after a loss? And that's best explained when you think about how large or small said loss might be. To send a message to an entire powerful, very powerful organization, there's so much money in these parties that they are almost dismotivated from following the edicts, or that's not the right word, from following the direction of their own voters. They've made up their mind what their agenda is going to be, most especially on the Republican side, and their voters be damned. And that's pretty much the reason why they find themselves in the predicament that they're in, though that's a whole entire other show. So there's 4 possible outcomes for this election. There is Trump wins, and it doesn't matter if he wins, and these are in no particular order of likelihood by any means. But it doesn't matter if Trump wins, large or small, a Trump win is going to be a Trump win because he will trumpet it as the entire country backs me now, even if he loses the popular vote yet again. And there's the possibility of a Biden win, like a squeaker, 4 points. 4 points would be what it would take for him to win it. Currently, the skew of the Electoral College is against the majority, and a candidate must win, a Democratic candidate must win 4% of the popular vote at a minimum, at a bare minimum, to even be considered winning, which is why, to even be considered on a winning path, okay? Which is why Joe Biden being up 8-9 points in so many of these states is a really big deal, because it's far over the Electoral College deficit that he started with, and you can even add in the decades-old Republican voter disenfranchisement and suppression, and that's really still only 2, maybe 3 points here and there. So 8-9 points, that's a win. That's a win, okay? But let's say in one example, Joe wins by 4, maybe 5 points. That's just a kind of a squeaker. He comes in at about 275, 279 votes, okay? The Electoral College votes. Or there is like a middling win for Joe Biden, right? And that would be like a 6 or 7 point win, just above where the cheating can take care of it. Can kibosh his win. But still not like a decisive victory. The House, maybe in that situation, the Dems would probably take the Senate, but not by more than a couple of seats, if that. We might end up with Kamala Harris, the VP, as a tiebreaker in vote after vote if they get rid of the filibuster. And we're going to talk about the Senate, probably in a later episode. I'm thinking we'll do these maybe once a week, okay? So the 4th scenario would be just a landslide for the Dems. A landslide, 9-10 points, which is possible. The last 2 scenarios are very, very possible. I would say the 2-3 point Biden overcoming the 3-point deficit, so Biden winning by 5-6 points, that's pretty possible. That's most likely, and I say that just because change sometimes happens in a less affirmative way than we would like it to. But I would also say that there is a more than non-zero chance that it's a blowout, and that the Dems end up with 6-7 seats extra in the Senate and gain seats in the House, which I almost think is a surety now, and Biden as the president. Now, what happens to the Republican Party in these scenarios is what we're talking about. Okay, so if we'll just take the least likely of outcomes and the least desirable of outcomes for our nation, and subsequently the world, if only because there's so much money concentrated here. you're not going to get jingoism here about, the best nation in the world and that kind of thing, because I'm not a big fan of, we're better than someone else because of an accident of geographical birth. I'm just not like that. I don't think that that's a way for humans to go about life. But there's a lot of money here, and there's a lot of culture that's come out of here over the last 100 years or so, more maybe. And what we do affects the rest of the world. And that's the truth of it. And if you haven't seen that, the truth of that over the last 4 years, at the very least, then you should be watching closer. So Trump wins, and the Republican Party basically suffers zero ramifications for backing a pseudo-fascist dictator, an authoritarian regime. My predictions for the party there are they continue on the same path. I would not be surprised if, because they have control of many states, that almost enough, arguably enough, if after the election, if they were to win again, that they wouldn't try for a constitutional convention to get rid of term limits. They would probably keep us with a little veneer of some sort of democracy, but it really wouldn't be. It would be closer to what Russia does whenever Putin is up. And I'm not sure, well, we would move into an oligarchy situation, and I'm not real sure how the American people would take that, especially if it was another win for Trump against the popular vote and an electoral college win. I can't help but feel that we might have reached a critical mass where that's unacceptable now. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Republicans were to take, if some off chance were to take hold the Senate. I don't think they could retake the House. I really don't. But if they did, contrary to everything they've done, which was, the last time they had complete control, all they did was pass a tax cut, basically, and name some roads and post office after themselves. I think that they would get on it. I think that they see the writing on the wall that their policy proposals are no longer wanted, and that they are the minority. And I think that they would do everything they could to try to make sure they are never able to lose power again. And we would be ceased to living in a democracy. It would no longer be a democracy if the Republicans were to win. And I believe that. I believe that to reward them for the behavior of the last 4 years and the behavior of their leader for the last 4 years will send them right over the edge into no longer believing in democracy. I mean, we have sitting Republican senators who tweet ridiculous things like, this isn't a democracy, it's a republic. Yeah, okay, well, you know better than that. But they don't care because it's all about messaging to them. Most of them know better than that. So, Trump winning, bad, very, very bad for the world, for democracy, for us. More death and disease. More unemployed people, homeless. They've proven that really they don't care about anybody but rich people. So that's where we're at with that. So we'll move on to the next one because that is a depressing subject and highly unlikely is where I'm at with that now. So the next option would be a Biden squeaker, just coming in a couple of points over what he needs to secure the Electoral College. So that'd be about a 4% win, which is generally where our elections are since 2000. Not too many, with the very notable exception of 2018, which we're going to refer to pretty often because in this conversation that you might be seeing on television or might be reading about it in the media or might be hearing your friends just talk about it, nobody seems to remember that not 2 years ago, the largest gains for Democrats in the United States House of Representatives happened since Watergate, really, since the last repudiation of a Republican administration. And it took the Republicans, until Gingrich to take the House back. So that's what, 20-something years? An entire generation of people who refused to give the Republicans the House back, even during the Nixon years. I'm sorry, the Reagan years. So if we get a squeaker for Joe, we're going to be kind of where we are. The Republican Party will be kind of where it is. It won't be forced to look internally to see what's wrong and why they're having to cheat to win, they'll just keep cheating to win. And that's what'll happen. We'll be in the same place we are now. It'll be hard for anything to get done, even if the Senate were to remove the filibuster, because in a Joe Biden squeaker, there's no guarantee the Democrats take the Senate. There's no guarantee they take 50. There's no guarantee they take 48 in a Joe Biden squeaker, because there's a few races out there that are close. Senate races, U.S. Senate races, they're really close. And if the incumbent only squeaks by, then there's a good chance that the current incumbents will squeak by as well. I'm sorry, if Joe Biden squeaks by, there's a pretty good chance the current Senate incumbents, Republican senators, will squeak by a win, and they don't need to worry about electoral college. They can win by a point, and that's it. They can win by, a quarter of a point, and that's it. 20 votes. So 1 vote, really. So if Biden wins in a squeaker, it's going to be more of the same. Unfortunately, the base will not be disemboldened. They will not be disheartened. They will fight harder because they think that because they'll probably think it was stolen, because they've been told by their party for 2 years now. 4 years really. Trump told them that 2016 was stolen from him after he won. So who knows how that's going to go? I do know that they will believe it was stolen, and there'll be a lot of Republican base members who do not take that kindly, and there may be unrest. I would really hope not, but there very well may be unrest. Widespread? I don't know. We're pretty calm society generally. Now, if Biden were to win in anything more than just a squeaker, the future of the Republican Party is not assured. By any means, it's not assured. When they did their 2012 reassessment of who they were as a party, they called it, I don't remember what they called it. It was something kind of more morbid. Oh, it was the autopsy report. That's what they called it. Well, when they did that, one of the things they discovered was that they were looking at a demographic pit, really, just like a pit that they couldn't get themselves out of. They'd been nativist and racist and corporatist and anti-science and anti-education for so long that really their only appeal now, and Trump really just kind of cemented it more than anything, that their only appeal at the time in 2012 was to white college non-educated voters. College-educated voters, I should say. And I'd like to always follow that with, that does not mean stupid people. That just means non-college educated. I don't like it when people say I'm just a mechanic. I mean, I couldn't be a mechanic. I'm a pretty smart guy, and I couldn't be a mechanic. That takes talent, and it takes brains, and it takes problem solving, and on down the jobs that a lot of us think you don't have to be smart to do. So really, the Republican Party has cornered themselves. They added to it by gerrymandering all their core voters into tiny little districts. They also did it by assuming that they would carry the suburbs for forever, and they most certainly are not. It only took Donald Trump for that to change, which again was just taking the veneer off. All they had to do was take the veneer off, or the mask, like the old Alien or the old V TV show. And they revealed the lizard people beneath, and people didn't like what they saw and they well shouldn't have. But people are busy in today's world, and it takes an effort to look past the obvious. And most of our effort nowadays is, just eating, finding money to eat. And it's been that way for quite some time. For most of us, the middle class has disappeared. So let's look at the other two scenarios, because I think that is going to tell us what happens to the Republican Party. Again, my most likely scenario is that Biden wins by 6 or 7 points, enough to cement a pretty firm hold on the Senate, and the House probably gains 6 to 9 seats, which would be an even greater hold on the House. And Republicans are in the wilderness, okay? They will still control this scenario. Would entail that the Republicans hold Georgia, the Republicans hold Texas, and Republicans hold Florida. If they lose two of those states, we move into blowout 400 plus electoral college votes for Joe Biden. But we're not there yet. Okay. So if they do lose that upper Midwest and Joe Biden comes in at, 280 to 3 something as far as the electoral college votes goes, we're looking at what, about a 7 or 8 point win, as far as popular vote goes. And that's a mandate. That's a mandate. That's an inarguable mandate from the American people that they want to do what Joe Biden proposed, or at the very least, and I think it's almost more likely, it's a mandate against the Republican Party. And Americans just want to figure it out after that. I think that's pretty close to where we are. Well, if that mandate happens, the Republican Party is going to be regaled to just the South and the northernmost mountain states, which is a low propensity of population, unless you're talking about some of your larger deep South cities. But realistically speaking, that's a regional party. That's not a national party anymore. And to regain a national partyhood status, the Republicans must look deep inside themselves and A, figure out what went wrong, which I could tell them for days, and B, figure out what they're going to do about it. Because again, their policy proposals, tax cuts for corporations, tax cuts for rich people, let states pay for their own infrastructure, let people fight it out for health care, free market above all, no constraints, no regulations, and almost most importantly, really just denying that the government has a role in people's lives. Like, the reason that people are frustrated with Trump over this pandemic is because the Republican Party has gone to their core belief that the government has zero role to play in people's lives. That really all it ever is an impediment to our lives. And that's not the way Americans think, because we made a government for us to run. The logic doesn't sit, are we an impediment to our own lives? That's not a logical thing. People aren't going to be buying into that. And now that they've seen that's really what the Republican Party is about through this pandemic reaction or non-reaction, they're starting to see the veneer again is being pulled away, that what the Republican Party is really all about is letting things just happen and survival of the fittest. Fortunately, I believe the human race has moved past that. A while ago, not too long ago, maybe only 100 years ago. You have to remember 100 years ago, we were still arresting cowboys, bank robbery, train robber cowboys. So maybe 120 years ago. But yeah, they were still around. I mean, human progress happens slow and fast at the same time. I know that makes no sense at all. So if the Republicans can't figure out why they lost, and they can't figure out how they need to change policy-wise, messaging-wise, staffing-wise. I mean, they only have 5 women in the House, and 2 of them just retired. Like, you cannot be a representative party in America anymore if you're all men. You just can't. You can't. This isn't the 1950s. It's not the 1960s or any time before that when men ruled the world. Things are different now, and they don't seem to figure that out. They're trying. They're making plays. They have a really, really light effort to recruit some women to the House, and they're getting them. The only problem is they're QAnon women. They're crazy people. They're not serious candidates. They're just somebody to fill a hole, basically, to fill a seat in the House. And that's fine. Actually, the House is a raucous place. It's the people's house. It should be reflective of the people, no matter how insane that might be. But there it is. And I don't think that they would need a huge tip at a Biden wins by 6 or 7 points. I don't think they'd need a huge tip to change. The problem is they're enthralled by their base, so I'm not real sure that they can. But if Biden only wins by 6 or 7 points, they'll be presented with an opportunity to grow into the modern world or die, basically, as a party. which is not good. One party rule, never a good thing. So, because when we move on to the next outcome, which would be a Biden landslide, 10 or more points, I mean, 165 million are expected to show up to vote. Somewhere between 156 and 165 million Americans are expected to show up to vote. And if that happens, 165 million people show up to vote, we're looking at a very, very probable, I would go so far as to say probable Biden landslide, 400 plus electoral votes, a serious mandate towards the future, an FDR kind of day. And that would put a lot of pressure on Republicans, a lot of downward pressure on Republicans, because they would have to realize that they're less than a regional party. They're a state party, basically. It's state level party with no aspirations towards a national movement or national policy making, because they would never have a majority. Because, now listen, if they lose in that sort of mandate, it's likely they will never have a chance to, because of the negative partisanship towards them, they would never have a chance to retake the House for another 20 plus years, just like before, just like after Watergate. And in that period of time, 20 years from now, in 15 years from now, their core base will be a solid 20% minority of this country. And they will find themselves gone as people move away from cities, because they're going to. They always do. They move. We move away. We move back. That's how it goes. But already we're seeing movements of more liberal-minded, progressive people moving into more red states and more red state areas. Kansas City, Missouri is an excellent example of that. So if the Republican Party loses in a landslide, they're looking at demographic oblivion. And I'm not real sure that they have the time to stave that off. And what we might end up looking at is a splinter from the Democratic Party. I don't believe that this country can operate with only one party. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure that's possible. And because democracy is about debate, it's about finding a common ground on problems. And if 20% of the nation is a member of a party that has no national policy making whatsoever, I'm not sure the nation can survive on that, because again, you're coming close to the critical mass of unsatisfied people that can start a movement to topple a nation. That's like the last thing we want, of course. So if they lose in a heavy landslide, I think that they might be done as a party. And if they're done as a party, it will either dissipate and we'll have something splinter off from the Democratic Party. Maybe some of the disaffected Republicans that have never been in the tank for Trump would try to start their own center-right party. But I'm not sure there is a place for a center-right party in America anymore, given that the right tried to be center-right during the Bush years, and that was a calamity. So that's where the Republican Party is, and that's what they're looking at. And unless they win or lose in a real tight squeaker, they don't really have a lot of future. They don't have a lot of future. They've pretty much bought into all the crazy, and you can't rule a country from crazy. You just can't. So that's today's episode. I was hoping that you guys got something out of it. We're going to do this more and more. I'll probably be more comfortable more comfortable with it as it goes. I'm going to do minimal editing because I'm an improviser, always have been. So if you didn't like me doing that or whatever, I'm sorry. It's just what people do. Have a great day. Election day is 7 days from now. So get out there and vote, and let's make sure to save America. Thanks, everybody. Finn signing out.